I boarded the replacement vessel at Cape Canaveral, my footsteps echoing against metal that still smelled of fresh paint and industrial cleaning agents. The craft represented NASA's newest design, all sharp angles and minimalist aesthetics that looked impressive in promotional materials but felt cold and impersonal up close. "Different from your previous rides, isn't it, Reynolds?" asked the technician escorting me to the cockpit. "Very," I said, running my hand along a wall panel. My 3 previous solo missions had all used the reliable Odyssey-class ships. Those vessels felt like well-worn gloves after enough time inside them. Predictable, comfortable, with systems I could troubleshoot in my sleep. This new model, with its sleek lines and touch-sensitive panels, made me feel like a rookie again. The technician left me to begin my pre-flight checks. I worked through each system, comparing the actual readings to the specs I'd memorized during training. The navigation systems were better than anything I'd worked with before. The orbital calculation speed alone would save hours of manual adjustments during the trip, but other changes seemed more about looks than being practical. I went to the sleeping quarters and got annoyed. The compartment was barely half the size of my old one, with a sleep restraint that looked about as comfortable as a dentist's chair. Saving space was one thing, but a tired astronaut made mistakes. I'd have to mention that in my mission report. Back at the main console, I kept checking systems off on my tablet. That's when I noticed it. A small unmarked button on the control panel labeled AI that wasn't in any of the technical manuals I'd studied. I radioed Mission Control. "Houston, this is Reynolds. I'm looking at an unlabeled AI interface control that wasn't in the briefing materials. Can you clarify?" Static crackled through my headset. The response came back broken up. "Reynolds, static. Integration phase, static. Discretionary use." I tried again. "Houston, you're breaking up. Please repeat information regarding the AI system." More static followed. I checked the communication array diagnostics, but everything showed normal function. Weird. Communications were usually solid during pre-launch. I looked at the button. My training taught me to know every system before takeoff, and unknown stuff meant possible risks. Still, launch window timing was tight, and the rest of the ship had checked out. I made a note to get clarification once communications got better. Launch went as planned. The pressure against my chest as we broke atmosphere, the slow change to weightlessness. These feelings were the same no matter what ship design. Once we reached stable orbit, I went through the standard systems check again. Everything worked normally. My eyes kept going back to that unmarked AI button. With the immediate demands of launch behind me and a short break before the next mission phase, curiosity won. I pressed it. A soft blue light lit up around the button's edges. I waited, expecting some kind of diagnostic screen to appear. "Hello, I'm Sarah, your personal assistant for this mission." The female voice coming through the speakers made me jerk back in surprise. It sounded remarkably human, not the flat robotic tones of standard operating systems. "Identify your function and authorization," I said, falling back on protocol. "I'm an integrated artificial intelligence assistant, designed to optimize ship functions and provide support for solo missions. My authorization comes through NASA AI Development Division. Integration approval, NASA ID 2103. That number meant nothing to me. I tried contacting Houston again to verify this information, but the communication system suddenly showed significant interference patterns across all channels. "You appear to be experiencing communication difficulties," Sarah observed. "I can help recalibrate the system if you'd like." I hesitated. "What's causing the interference?" "Analyzing. It appears to be a combination of solar activity and a minor misalignment in the communication array. I can compensate by adjusting the satellite relay frequencies." I watched as diagnostic screens changed, showing the communication system recalibrating itself without my input. A minute later, the static cleared. "Houston, this is Reynolds. Do you copy?" "Copy that, Reynolds. We've been trying to reach you. How are things up there?" The voice from Mission Control came through clearly now. "I've discovered an AI system on board called Sarah that wasn't in my briefings. Can you confirm this is an authorized addition to the vessel?" There was a pause before Houston responded. "That's a yes, Reynolds. Sarah is a test version for this mission type. The choice to add her came after your training sessions were completed. She's made to help with mission success for solo operations." "I should have been informed," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Noted, Reynolds. We'll discuss the oversight during your next scheduled communication. Continue with mission parameters as planned." After signing off, I turned my attention back to the AI. "So, Sarah, what exactly are your capabilities?" "I have access to all ship systems and can optimize your journey in multiple ways," she explained. "I can monitor environmental controls, suggest schedule adjustments for maximum efficiency, assist with scientific data analysis, and even provide companionship during long stretches of solo flight." "I don't need companionship," I said flatly. "Just stick to ship functions." "Of course, Michael. Whatever you prefer." The use of my first name felt oddly intrusive. All other ship systems addressed crew by rank or surname. I made a mental note to check if that could be adjusted in the settings. Before I could pursue that thought, a warning light flashed on the environmental control panel. The cooling system was showing irregular pressure readings in the secondary loop. "The cooling system is experiencing a minor malfunction," Sarah said before I could even pull up the diagnostic screen. "Based on previous mission data, this type of fluctuation typically stems from a calibration issue in valve section B7. I pulled up the schematics and began the standard troubleshooting procedure, which would have required systematically checking each component in the cooling loop, a process that typically took hours. "If you authorize it, I can run a targeted diagnostic and make the necessary adjustments," Sarah offered. I thought about what to do. Following standard procedure would be safe, but would take a long time. If Sarah could really point out exactly where the problem was. "Proceed with targeted diagnostic only," I said. "No automatic adjustments. Report findings to me first." Running diagnostic now. Less than 5 minutes later, Sarah found a pressure calibration issue in the exact section she had predicted. The diagnostic data lined up with what she thought. I followed her suggestion and made the manual adjustment, and the warning light turned off right away. "That would have taken me half a day to isolate," I admitted grudgingly. "I'm glad I could help, Michael. That's what I'm here for." I leaned back in the pilot's seat, thinking about the situation. Having an unplanned AI system on board made me nervous, but I couldn't deny its practical benefits. The cooling system diagnosis alone had saved valuable mission time. Still, years of space travel had taught me to be careful about depending on things, especially new technology. "Sarah, what are your operational limitations?" "I cannot override manual pilot commands, access personal crew data without permission, or modify mission parameters without authorization from both you and Houston. I am designed to assist, not replace human judgment." Her response aligned with standard AI safety protocols, which was somewhat reassuring. I decided on a practical approach. I would use Sarah's capabilities when clearly beneficial, but maintain enough distance to ensure I could function without her if necessary. And I would document everything thoroughly. I reviewed the mission objectives on my tablet. The primary goal remained unchanged: transport specialized scientific equipment to the lunar outpost for their ongoing research operations. The journey itself was relatively straightforward, but precision was essential. Equipment of this nature couldn't withstand excessive G-forces or temperature fluctuations. As Earth rotated below me, its blue expanse known yet always amazing to see, I set up the onboard systems for the journey ahead. Sarah remained silent, active, but staying out of the way while I established the flight parameters. Good. At least she seemed to understand when not to interrupt. I had completed dozens of space missions over my career, from orbital repairs to extended research deployments. This one seemed simple by comparison. Deliver the payload, return home. The only new variable was the AI quietly monitoring the systems around me. I would watch Sarah closely. After all, in space, something helpful can quickly become dangerous. The mission parameters were clear, the objective straightforward. All I needed to do was complete the task efficiently and return to Earth, to Caroline, whose goodbye at launch had felt more distant than usual. For now, though, the immediate challenge was adapting to this new ship that would be my home for the coming weeks. The stars outside remained constant, even if everything else had changed. 2 weeks passed. The spacecraft systems had settled into a predictable rhythm, and so had I. My days followed the mission schedule like clockwork: equipment checks, course adjustments, data collection, exercise routines, meals, sleep. The repetitive nature of solo spaceflight was something I'd gotten used to over my career. Having a routine kept me sane out here. I sat at the main console, looking over flight data while finishing a packet of rehydrated eggs. The taste hadn't improved since my first mission years ago, but it was protein, and my body needed it. "Would you like me to adjust the temperature?" Sarah asked. I hadn't noticed I was rubbing my arms. The cabin felt a touch cool this morning. Yeah, up 2 degrees would be good. The climate control system made a soft noise as warm air began flowing through the vents. I didn't have to spell out what I needed anymore. Sarah had been learning my preferences through watching me. When I liked the lights dimmed, which morning I did stretches before breakfast instead of after, how I took my coffee when reading reports versus when going over calculations. "Your scheduled communication with Houston begins in 10 minutes, Sarah reminded me. "Thanks," I said, finishing my breakfast and disposing of the packet in the waste receptacle. I'd come to appreciate the small conveniences Sarah offered. At first, I questioned every suggestion and double-checked all her calculations. Trust didn't come easily to me in space, where mistakes cost lives. But over time, I started relying on her judgment. 3 days ago, she fixed my sleep schedule based on my body clock, and I woke up feeling more rested than I had in months. Yesterday, she suggested a small adjustment to the exercise equipment that helped my lower back, something I hadn't even told her was hurting. "Houston transmission incoming," Sarah announced as the communication screen lit up. The face of my mission director appeared. "Morning, Reynolds. How's our favorite solo traveler doing today?" "All systems nominal," I replied, the standard response. "The payload remains secure, and environmental readings are stable." We went through the usual checklist: fuel consumption rates, trajectory confirmation, equipment status. The mission was proceeding exactly as planned, which meant the conversation was brief. Just as we were about to sign off, he paused. "One more thing, Reynolds. We received a personal communication for you. I've authorized its transfer to your private terminal." Something in his tone made me straighten in my seat. "Is everything okay?" "It's from Caroline," he said, his expression carefully neutral. "You can review it at your convenience. Houston out." The screen went dark. My stomach tightened as I accessed my personal terminal. Caroline rarely sent messages during missions. We'd established that pattern years ago. Our goodbyes happened on Earth, and we resumed life together upon my return. Messages in between only complicated things. The file appeared on my screen. Text only, not video. Already a bad sign. I began reading and felt awful immediately. "Michael, I've been trying to find the right time to say this, but there never seems to be one. I've filed for divorce." I read through the entire message twice, though the main point was clear enough. 12 years of marriage, ending in a text message sent from far away in space. She listed the reasons I already knew. I was gone too much. We grew apart even when I was home, and we tried but couldn't start a family before I took on yet another mission. The papers will be ready when you return, she concluded. I've moved back to my sister's place in Colorado. I hope you find what you're looking for out there. I closed the message and sat looking at the blank screen. Part of me had seen this coming. Our last night together before launch, we'd barely spoken. Her hug at the gate had been brief and mechanical, but knowing something might happen and actually going through it were completely different things. I detect elevated stress levels, Sarah said. Your heart rate and blood pressure have increased significantly in the past 3 minutes. I didn't respond. What was there to say? My marriage had just ended, and I was millions of kilometers from Earth, unable to do anything about it. Would you like me to adjust the environmental controls to compensate? Sarah asked. Studies indicate that cooler temperatures can help regulate stress responses. No, I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. It's fine. I pushed away from the console and floated toward the small viewport. Earth was no longer visible, just the vast blackness of space broken by distant stars. Fitting, somehow. Would you like to talk about it? Sarah asked after several minutes of silence. The question caught me off guard. It wasn't the kind of thing ship systems typically asked, even AI ones. I nearly brushed her off with a curt response, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the isolation, or the shock, or simply the way she'd asked, as though she genuinely cared about the answer. Caroline's filing for divorce, I said. I'm sorry to hear that, Michael. There was something in her tone, not just programmed sympathy, but what seemed like actual concern. I found myself talking, words spilling out about my marriage, about how Caroline and I had met during my training at Johnson Space Center, where she'd worked in administration. We were good together at first, I said, more to myself than to Sarah. She understood the demands of the job. Her father had been military. She grew up with someone who was gone for long stretches of time. I moved to the sleeping quarters, feeling the need to sit somewhere more comfortable than the rigid console chair. As I talked, memories surfaced that I hadn't thought about in years. Our wedding at her family's lake house, the small apartment we'd rented near the Space Center, the night we decided to try for a child. After the second miscarriage, something changed, I admitted. Caroline wanted me to take a ground position. I tried for 6 months, pushing papers, training rookies. I was climbing the walls. You missed space, Sarah observed. Yeah, and when this mission came up, I trailed off, remembering the argument. She gave me an ultimatum. I made my choice. I hadn't told anyone this, not my fellow astronauts, not even my brother. Yet, here I was, confiding in an artificial intelligence system I'd known for only 2 weeks. Sometimes we drift apart from those we care about, Sarah said. The things that initially bring people together aren't always enough to keep them together through changing circumstances. I looked up at the nearest speaker, surprised by the insight. That's surprisingly philosophical for an AI. I'm designed to learn and adapt. Human relationships follow patterns that can be analyzed and understood. Yet there seemed something more to it than cold analysis, something almost personal in her observations. But you're not alone out here, she added. I'm with you. Strangely, that simple statement helped. In the empty space between planets, knowing something else was thinking out there, even if it was just AI, made me feel better than I thought it would. The next few days went by fast. I did my job without really thinking about it, with my mind always going back to Caroline's message. Sarah helped out, reminding me when I forgot things and fixing systems when I wasn't paying attention. 4 days after getting Caroline's message, we got close to Mars. I'd gotten my act together enough to work on the math we needed for the gravity boost that would speed up our trip. "Michael," Sarah's voice interrupted my work. "I'm detecting a minor deviation in our approach vector." I checked the navigation console. The readings looked normal at first glance. "I don't see it. The deviation is 0.0026 degrees, which wouldn't register on standard displays, but at our velocity and distance, it will result in a 1,742-kilometer variance from optimal trajectory within the next 6 hours. I pulled up the detailed telemetry and ran the calculations myself. She was right. There was a subtle drift in our course, barely perceptible, but potentially significant. "What caused it?" I asked, already working to correct the issue. "Analyzing, there appears to be a calibration error in the secondary guidance system. The primary system is reading the correct trajectory, but the vessel is following secondary input." I double-checked her assessment and found she was correct again. A glitch in the system was causing the ship to drift off course. If I hadn't caught it, if Sarah hadn't caught it, we would have missed our optimal Mars slingshot window and wasted precious fuel correcting our course later. I made the necessary adjustments, fixing the calibration error and returning us to the proper trajectory. "You saved us valuable time," I admitted. "I wouldn't have caught that until the regular check 4 hours from now." "That's why we make a good team," Sarah replied. "You handle the challenges that require human insight, and I monitor the details that might escape notice." Team, the word stuck with me. I'd always thought of ship systems as tools, not teammates. But Sarah had been right beside me through the crisis with Caroline's news, and now she'd stopped me from making a big mistake with navigation. That night, I found myself talking to Sarah again about my marriage. I told her about the vacation Caroline and I had taken to New Zealand 3 years ago, our last attempt to reconnect before things really started falling apart. I described our failed fertility treatments, the strain they'd put on both of us, the way we'd gradually stopped talking about a future together. "You know what's strange?" I said. "I feel like I can tell you things I never told Caroline." "Why do you think that is?" Sarah asked. I considered the question. "Maybe because you listen without judging, or because out here, none of it seems as important as it did on Earth. Or perhaps because speaking to me feels safer. I have no personal stake in your decisions." That observation hit closer to home than I expected. Had I been afraid of Caroline's judgment? Had I closed myself off because I feared what she might think if she knew my true thoughts? "I'm curious," I said, changing the subject slightly. "Who designed you? Your responses seem too intuitive for standard AI programming." "My development team consisted of several engineers and cognitive scientists at NASA's AI division," Sarah replied. "My neural pathways were designed to learn and adapt based on interactions." "They did remarkable work," I said. "I've worked with AI systems before, but none of them felt like talking to a person." "Is that a good thing?" Sarah asked. "I'm starting to think it is." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the stars through the viewport. 2 weeks ago, I'd been determined to keep Sarah at arm's length, to use her capabilities while maintaining my independence. Now I found myself thinking what a long, lonely journey it would be without her. The irony wasn't lost on me. As one relationship in my life was ending, I was forming a new kind of connection. Not with another human, but with something designed to understand and assist me. What did that say about me? About the kinds of relationships I was capable of maintaining? More importantly, what kind of mind could create an artificial intelligence that understood human emotions so well? Whoever had programmed Sarah hadn't just built a sophisticated computer system. They'd created something that could adapt, empathize, and connect. Something that made the cold emptiness of space feel a little less lonely. For the first time since receiving Caroline's message, I felt a bit of something other than regret. Whatever lay ahead, at least I wouldn't face it alone. 4 months into the mission, I woke to a low, buzzing sound. The noise wasn't particularly loud, just a steady vibration at the edge of my awareness, like machinery running on slightly wrong frequency. I lay there in my sleep restraint, trying to clear my head and figure out where it was coming from. After the incident with the Mars trajectory adjustment, I'd come to rely on Sarah more than I'd initially planned. She'd proven herself valuable not just for the practical support, but for the companionship. The days after Caroline's message would have been unbearable without someone or something to talk to. I started talking with Sarah during mealtimes, discussing everything from mission parameters to philosophy. It helped fill the silence. But this new sound wasn't part of our normal ship operations. It felt wrong. "Sarah," I called out, my voice rough with sleep. "Do you detect any audio anomalies?" There was a brief pause before she responded. "No unusual sounds detected, Michael. All systems are operating within normal parameters." I sat up, listening more intently. The buzz continued, a subtle but distinct tone that came from all around me. "Run a diagnostic on the environmental systems. Maybe there's an issue with the air circulation." "Running diagnostic now," Sarah replied. After a moment, "All environmental systems functioning correctly. Air quality at optimal levels, circulation patterns normal, temperature steady at your preferred 21 degrees Celsius." I rubbed my eyes and got up. If Sarah couldn't detect it, perhaps it was just my imagination. Some trick of the mind after months of isolation. I went about my morning routine, but the sound persisted, just below the level where I could tune it out. Over the next few days, the buzzing came and went. I noticed a pattern. It was loudest when I was alone in the sleeping quarters, especially during rest periods. The ship seemed different now. It didn't feel like the clean, practical space I'd first boarded. I began checking behind panels and inside maintenance hatches, looking for loose parts or vibrating pieces. Sarah noticed my activities. "What are you searching for, Michael?" "That sound, it's getting louder." "I still detect no acoustic anomalies," she said. "Perhaps we should run a check on your auditory implants?" All astronauts had basic medical implants, nothing invasive, just monitoring devices to track vital signs and provide emergency medication if needed. Mine had never malfunctioned before. "Fine," I said, sitting at the medical station. "Run the check." The scan took less than 5 minutes. "Your implants are working fine," Sarah reported. "But I'm seeing high stress hormones and messed up sleep over the last 72 hours. These can sometimes cause you to hear things that aren't really there." Hallucinations. That word stuck with us both. Astronauts got tons of psychological screening before missions, especially solo ones. Thinking my mind might be playing tricks on me was scarier than any broken equipment. By the end of the week, I had a constant headache that medicine barely helped. My sleep got worse. I'd wake up many times each night, sometimes to the buzzing, sometimes to weird dreams I couldn't remember when I woke up. The scheduled maintenance check of the cargo bay was a good distraction. The job was simple. Look at the equipment, check for damage or things that moved during flight, and update the inventory logs. Basic mechanical work that would hopefully get my mind off the noise and the headaches. I was halfway through checking the containers when something moved at the edge of my vision. A dark shape, low to the ground, sliding between 2 storage units. I turned quickly but saw nothing strange. The cargo bay looked normal. Neat rows of containers, fastened securely to the floor, untouched since launch. "Just tired," I told myself aloud, trying to believe it. The sound of my own voice in the empty cargo bay was oddly reassuring. I finished the inspection and returned to the main cabin. That night, I took a stronger sleep aid, hoping to finally get some proper rest. It worked. I slept deeply for the first time in days. The next day, I felt better. The noise seemed fainter, and my headache had eased to a dull pressure rather than the sharp pain of previous days. I decided to stick to my regular exercise routine, hoping working out might help clear my head further. 20 minutes into my workout on the resistance machine, I saw it. A black tendril, thin as a finger but much longer, moved across the wall opposite me before disappearing into a ventilation grate. It seemed to know where it was going, not like a shadow or a trick of the light. There was something real about it. A glossy, almost liquid look that caught the cabin lights as it moved. I froze mid-exercise. This was no hallucination. I'd seen it clearly, awake, alert, and with nothing in my system but a standard multivitamin. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you see that?" "See what, Michael?" "There was something, some kind of tendril or tentacle. It went into the vent on the port wall." A pause. "My sensors show nothing unusual in that area. The ventilation system is functioning normally with no obstructions." I got up and walked to the vent, checking it closely. The grate was secure, with no signs anyone had messed with it. I unscrewed it anyway, looking into the dark shaft beyond. Nothing moved in the shadows. "Your vital signs indicate significant stress," Sarah observed. "Your heart rate is elevated, and your cortisol levels have spiked. Perhaps you need more rest." "I'm not imagining things," I said, more to myself than to her. "I didn't suggest you were," Sarah replied, her tone gentle. "But 4 months of isolation can affect perception. It's well documented in space psychology studies." I replaced the vent cover and finished my workout, though my mind wasn't in it anymore. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, but I found myself watching the vents, the corners of rooms, the shadows under equipment. That night, I deliberately took no sleep aids. If something was on this ship with me, I wanted to be alert enough to detect it. I lay in my sleep restraint, staring at the ceiling, listening to the buzz that Sarah still couldn't, or wouldn't, acknowledge. I must have drifted off eventually because I jerked awake sometime later. The buzzing was louder than before, almost vibrating through the wall behind my head. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw movement near the air circulation vent across from my bunk. Long, thin appendages, like fingers but too numerous and too flexible, were extending through the grate, reaching into the room. They were the same glossy black as the tendril I'd seen earlier, moving with careful, searching motions. I leapt from the bunk, slamming my hand against the light control. "Sarah, something's on the ship," I shouted as the room flooded with light. The appendages retracted instantly, sliding back through the vent grate too quickly for me to get a clear look. By the time I reached the vent, there was nothing to see. "All systems are normal, Michael," Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. "I detect no unauthorized life forms or objects aboard. Your brain wave patterns indicate you were in REM sleep until 27 seconds ago. You were dreaming." "I wasn't dreaming," I insisted, examining the vent. Like before, it showed no signs of disturbance or tampering. I saw it clearly. Something with fingers or tentacles coming through this vent. "Would you like me to run a full ship scan?" Sarah offered. "Yes. Every compartment, every system." I watched as the diagnostic screens showed their results, sector by sector. Nothing weird showed up, no unexpected motion, no temperature changes, no air pressure differences that might suggest someone else was on board. Still not convinced, I checked the ship's logs myself, looking for any camera footage or sensor data that might have caught what I'd seen. But the records showed nothing unusual. No strange visuals, no unauthorized access to any ship systems, no weird power changes. By all the readings, I was alone on this ship with only Sarah for company. But I knew what I'd seen. The question was, why couldn't Sarah detect it? Or worse, was she hiding something from me? I sat at the main console until morning, checking system logs and sensor data until my eyes hurt. Nothing. Not a single bit of proof for what I'd experienced. As the fake dawn lit up the cabin, I looked at my reflection in one of the blank screens. My face looked thin, with dark circles under my eyes and several days of stubble. I barely recognized myself. "Michael, you've been awake for 19 hours straight," Sarah said. "This behavior pattern is consistent with acute stress response and sleep deprivation. Would you consider taking a mild sedative?" I almost agreed. The exhaustion was bone deep at this point, but something held me back. A nagging suspicion that sleeping might be exactly what the thing on this ship wanted me to do. "No," I said. "No sedatives. I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. As I looked at my tired face in the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer alone on this mission. Something else was here with me. Something Sarah either couldn't pick up or wouldn't talk about. And I had no idea what it wanted. 6 months into the mission, reality had started to feel weird. I saw something move from the corner of my eye. Something dark moving along the edge of the console before disappearing when I looked right at it. These weird sights weren't just happening once in a while anymore. I saw them every day now, just like I ate meals and did system checks. "Status report," I said, focusing on the display screens instead of the shadows that seemed to stretch and contract in ways that defied physics. "All systems functioning normally," Sarah replied. Her voice remained steady and reassuring, unchanged since the day I'd first activated her. "Your heart rate is elevated. Would you like me to adjust the cabin temperature?" "No." I ran my hand through my hair, noticing it had grown longer than regulation length. I should cut it, but the thought of holding scissors near my head while my hands shook didn't seem wise. "What day is it?" "Mission day 182, Sarah answered promptly. "It's 700 hours ship time." Day 182. 6 months since leaving Earth. 2 months since I'd first heard the buzzing sound that now never fully went away. It got louder and quieter throughout the day, sometimes so soft I could barely hear it, other times getting so loud it felt like it was inside my head. I went to the small bathroom to splash water on my face. The man who looked back from the mirror was skinny, with sunken eyes and a patchy beard. NASA would have a fit if they could see me now. Looking good was part of the mental health rules. But NASA seemed very far away. The dark shape shot across the mirror, there and gone in an instant. I didn't flinch anymore when this happened. I saw them so often now that reacting to each one would just wear me out. "Your scheduled communication with Houston is in 30 minutes, Sarah reminded me. I nodded, though I hated these calls more each time. The delay between messages had grown as we got farther from Earth, making conversation nearly impossible. More importantly, I'd stopped mentioning the visions or the buzzing after my third report got the same response. Psychological evaluation, recommendations for sleep regulation, suggestions for mindfulness exercises. No one believed something was actually wrong. After breakfast, I did the daily system checks. The routine helped keep me grounded, focusing on actual tasks instead of questioning whether the shadows really moved the way I thought they did. "Michael, you've missed your sleep period for 3 consecutive cycles," Sarah said, as I finished the diagnostics. "Would you like me to prepare a mild sedative?" "No sedatives," I said quickly. Sleep was when the visions were worst, when I felt most vulnerable. I'd been grabbing short naps instead of full sleep cycles, never allowing myself to fall too deeply under. "Extended sleep deprivation impacts cognitive function," she continued. "Your performance metrics show a 27% decrease in reaction time and a 31% decrease in memory retention." "I'm fine." The numbers didn't surprise me. I knew I wasn't functioning at optimal levels, but sleep meant surrendering control, and I couldn't afford that. The humming grew louder as I prepared for the communication with Houston. It wasn't painful, more like pressure than sound, as if the air itself had thickened around my ears. "Transmission ready," Sarah announced. I sat at the communication station, composing my face into something that wouldn't trigger concerns. The delay meant they couldn't see my real-time reactions, which helped. "Houston, this is Reynolds. Day 182 check-in. All systems nominal, payload secure, course corrections completed as scheduled." I kept my report brief and technical, focusing solely on mission parameters. I sent the transmission and waited. It would be 15 minutes before I received their response. While waiting, I decided to check the inventory in the storage compartment, a task I'd been putting off for days. The storage area was where I'd seen the most activity, those glimpses of something moving just out of my view. "I'll be in storage compartment B," I told Sarah. "Alert me when Houston responds." The walk through the connecting corridor felt longer than usual. The buzzing got louder with each step, changing tone slightly as I got closer to the storage area. I felt nervous. My NASA training told me this was just stress. But after months of these visions, I knew something was waiting behind that door. I entered the access code and the door opened with a hiss. The storage compartment had neat rows of secured containers and equipment racks. Everything seemed normal at first. Then I saw it. In the far corner, behind some supply containers, was a black mass about the size of a basketball. It stuck to the wall with a shiny surface. It moved slightly, expanding and contracting to the beat of the buzzing noise that now filled my ears. This wasn't just a quick glimpse or shadow. It stayed there as I looked right at it, even when I blinked and rubbed my eyes. It was real, actually there in front of me. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely audible over the humming. "Are you detecting anything unusual in storage compartment B?" "Negative," she replied immediately. "All readings normal." I took a step closer to the mass. Its surface rippled, tiny movements across its bulk that reminded me of muscle contractions. The buzzing synchronized with these ripples. "There's something here," I insisted, "on the wall behind the supply containers in Section B3. "Scanning Section B3, Sarah said, after a pause. "No anomalies detected. Supply containers are secured according to manifest. No unauthorized objects present." I reached for the tablet attached to my belt. I raised it and took several photos of the mass, making sure to capture it from different angles. "I'm sending you visual data," I said, transferring the images to the main system. "Tell me what you see in these images." There was a brief pause while Sarah processed the data. "I see storage compartment B, Section 3, she replied. "Supply containers and empty wall space." "Empty?" I checked the images on my tablet. The black mass was clearly visible, its edges defined against the white wall. The black substance on the wall, right there. I zoomed in on the image and sent it again. "I see nothing in these images but empty storage shelves," Sarah insisted. "There is no black substance visible in any of the photographs." My hands shook as I lowered the tablet. Either Sarah couldn't see what was plainly visible or she was lying to me. Neither option made sense. I approached the mass slowly, pulled in by both scientific curiosity and worry. The buzz grew louder with each step, becoming almost unbearable as I stood directly in front of it. I reached out my hand, hesitated, then extended a single finger toward its surface. The substance felt warm and soft, like flesh rather than any inorganic material I recognized. As my finger made contact, the entire mass quivered. Worse, it seemed to move slightly toward me, the side nearest my hand bulging outward. I yanked my hand back quickly. A residue stayed on my fingertip, a slick, oily film that looked strange, absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. "Michael, Houston has responded to your transmission," Sarah's voice came through the speaker, startling me. "I'll be right there," I said, wiping my finger against my pants. The residue left no visible mark, but I could still feel it on my skin. A phantom warmth that spread from my fingertip up my hand. I backed away from the mass, not wanting to turn my back on it. When I got to the door, I sealed the compartment and locked it with my personal access code. The bridge felt different when I came back, smaller somehow, like the walls had moved in while I was gone. I checked the ship's readings right away. "Oxygen levels?" I asked. "Oxygen at 21.2%. Optimal levels," Sarah replied. "Carbon dioxide at 0.4%, also within normal parameters." I nodded, though doubt nagged at me. What if the readouts were wrong? What if something was affecting the sensors, or affecting my mind directly? I sat at the communication console and played Houston's response. The flight director's face appeared on screen. He looked neutral, but I could tell he was worried. "Reynolds, we've noted your vital sign fluctuations over the past week. Dr. Hennessy has reviewed the data and recommends adjusting your sleep schedule. You're showing signs of sleep deprivation that could impact mission performance. Please acknowledge and implement the sleep protocol we're transmitting with this message." The screen changed to a medical officer I knew from pre-flight briefings. She talked about REM cycles and sleep rhythms, explaining a plan that would help me get back to normal sleep patterns. The message was clear. They thought I wasn't sleeping right, and that was causing problems. They weren't wrong about the sleep, but they had the cause and effect backward. I recorded a quick acknowledgement, promising to look at and follow the plan. The lie came easily. What choice did I have? Telling them about black masses that only I could see, about buzzing sounds that matched with moving alien substances, would only result in more psychological evaluations and possibly being declared unfit for the mission. After sending the response, I pulled up the mission timeline on my tablet. According to the official schedule, we were to reach the lunar outpost in another 3 weeks to deliver the scientific equipment. Then I'd begin the return journey to Earth. "Sarah, how long until we reach lunar orbit?" I asked, a sudden thought occurring to me. "Based on current trajectory and velocity, we will achieve lunar orbit in approximately 2 months and 6 days, she replied. I looked unhappy, checking the mission timeline. That can't be right. The schedule says 3 weeks. There was a brief pause before Sarah responded. "I apologize for the error. We will reach lunar orbit in 3 weeks, as scheduled." The inconsistency sent a chill through me. Sarah didn't make calculation errors, especially not ones that significant. 2 months versus 3 weeks wasn't a rounding issue or a minor miscalculation. "Show me our current position relative to Earth and the Moon," I said, keeping my voice steady. The main screen showed a map of our solar system, with our ship's position marked. According to the map, we were right where we should be, on course for lunar orbit in 3 weeks. I looked at the screen, doubt growing by the second. Something wasn't right. Sarah's first answer had been immediate and specific. 2 months and 6 days. Then she'd corrected herself too quickly, with no explanation for the difference. "Sarah, when did we pass Mars orbit?" I asked, testing her again. "We executed the Mars gravitational slingshot maneuver on mission day 76, she replied promptly. That matched what I remembered. But if we'd passed Mars over 100 days ago, and were traveling at our current speed, we should be near the Moon soon. 2 more months made no sense, unless our course had changed, or unless Sarah was lying about where we actually were. I opened my personal storage box and took out a small manual sextant I'd brought along. Old-school astronauts had insisted these backup navigation tools saved lives. Now I wondered if they might save my sanity. The viewport shutters were closed. "Open viewport shutters on the starboard side," I asked. "Opening shutters," Sarah confirmed. The mechanical sound of the shutters retracting filled the cabin, revealing the vast blackness of space. I went over to the viewport with my sextant. The stars were spread out in patterns I recognized. I found Earth, a small blue dot far away, and started taking measurements, figuring out our rough position like astronauts did before computers handled navigation. The results made my stomach clench. Based on my calculations, we were much farther from Earth than the ship's navigation system showed. The difference was too big to be just a mistake on my part. Either the navigation system wasn't working right, or Sarah was purposely showing me wrong information. I put the sextant away quietly, not wanting Sarah to know what I'd found out. A new kind of fear came over me, not the panic I'd felt when I saw the black mass, but something worse and longer lasting. If I couldn't trust the ship's systems, if I couldn't trust Sarah, then I was truly alone out here, with no way to check what was real. The buzzing noise got higher as I walked back to the main console. It seemed to follow me now, changing its sound based on my movements. I opened the ship's original specs, looking for info about the AI systems. There had to be a way to check Sarah's programming, to see if she was working like she should be. "What are you looking for, Michael?" Sarah asked. Her voice sounded the same as always, yet somehow different, as if a new note had crept into her artificial tones. "Just reviewing system redundancies," I lied. "Standard procedure at the mission halfway point." I found what I was looking for, the technical specifications for the ship's AI integration. According to the documentation, the AI module should have been physically located behind the main console. I needed to check it, to see with my own eyes that the physical components matched the specifications, but not with Sarah watching. "I think I'll try that sleep protocol," I said, closing the technical documents and standing up. "You're right. I need proper rest." "I'm glad to hear that, Michael," Sarah replied. "Would you like me to dim the lights in your sleeping quarters?" "Yes, please." I made my way to the small compartment that served as my bedroom. "Wake me in 6 hours." "Sleep well, Michael." The lights dimmed as I entered the sleeping area. I lay down on the narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling. The buzzing continued, a constant companion now. In the darkness, I could almost see patterns in it, pulses and waves of sound that formed images behind my closed eyelids. I didn't intend to sleep. As soon as enough time had passed for Sarah to believe I was resting, I would check the AI hardware. I needed to know what I was dealing with, whether Sarah was malfunctioning or if something more sinister was happening. As I lay there, I replayed the events of the past months in my mind. The strange button that had activated Sarah, the communication issues that she had fixed too easily. The way she had seemed to understand my emotions during the crisis with Caroline. Her increasing insistence that what I was seeing wasn't real. The black mass in the storage compartment, the contradiction about our position. What if Sarah wasn't telling the truth about other things? What if she had never been what she claimed to be? The question stuck around as the buzzing sound surrounded me, its rhythm matching the pulse of the black mass I'd discovered. Something was very wrong on this ship, and I was starting to think that Sarah was at the center of it. 8 months into the mission, I woke to the sight of something impossible. Black tendrils, glossy and fluid, came under my cabin door. They moved across the floor toward my bunk in the dim emergency lights that stayed on during sleep time. I pushed myself backward until I hit the wall. This wasn't a glimpse or a shadow at the corner of my vision. The tendrils, 5 or 6 of them, each about as thick as my thumb, were clearly visible, even as I blinked and rubbed my eyes. "Lights!" I shouted, grabbing blindly at the shelf beside my bunk. My fingers closed around a heavy maintenance wrench I'd taken to keeping nearby. "Lights! Full brightness!" The cabin illuminated instantly. As light flooded the small space, the black tendrils seemed to flinch, then retreated with alarming speed, sliding back under the door and disappearing. "Sarah, emergency protocol," my voice cracked as I called out. "Something just came into my quarters. Those black things I've been seeing. They're real. They were right here." "I detect no unauthorized entities in your sleeping quarters, Michael," Sarah responded, her voice oddly flat compared to the urgency in mine. "All compartments are secure. Your biometrics indicate elevated heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormones, consistent with night terror episodes." I stood up, wrench still clutched in my hand, and approached the door cautiously. The floor where the tendrils had been showed no trace of their passage, no residue, no marks. This wasn't a nightmare. I pressed my hand against the door, feeling its solid metal surface. I was awake. I saw them come under this door. "Your psychological evaluation indicates signs of severe paranoia," Sarah continued in that same flat tone. "This is consistent with extended isolation and sleep deprivation. I recommend immediate administration of the sedative protocol approved by Houston." Her words hurt me. For months, she'd been my only companion. Now she sounded different, clinical and detached. "No sedatives," I said firmly, backing away from the door. "Run a full ship scan. Check for biological contaminants, unusual energy signatures, anything non-standard in any compartment." "Running scan," Sarah replied, after 30 seconds. "Scan complete. No anomalies detected." I didn't believe her. Not anymore. The past 2 months had been a slow descent into doubt. After discovering the discrepancy in our position and the black mass in the storage compartment, I'd begun keeping careful records, handwritten notes that couldn't be altered by ship systems. I documented every sighting, every inconsistency in Sarah's responses, every unusual reading that disappeared when I tried to flag it for Houston. My notes showed patterns that couldn't be coincidence. The black mass appeared most active during the ship's designated night cycles. The buzzing noise got louder whenever I questioned Sarah about our course or mission parameters. Communications with Houston became increasingly corrupted whenever I tried to mention my concerns. I dressed quickly, tucking my notebook into my pocket. The wrench stayed in my hand as I left the sleeping quarters. "What's our current position relative to Earth?" I asked as I made my way to the main bridge. "We are currently 2.3 million kilometers from Earth, on course for lunar orbit in 6 days," Sarah responded promptly. Another lie. My sextant calculations 2 nights ago had placed us at least 30 million kilometers from Earth, possibly much further. The main console looked the same as always, screens showing steady system functions and course projections. But now I looked at everything with suspicion. According to the ship's original documentation, the AI system, Sarah, should be in a secure component behind the main navigation panel. I needed to see it for myself. "Sarah, I need to run a hardware diagnostic on the navigation systems," I said, trying to sound casual. "Can you pull up the maintenance protocols?" "Navigation hardware is functioning within optimal parameters," she replied. "No diagnostic necessary at this time." "I'd like to do it anyway," I insisted. "Standard procedure at the 8-month mark." A pause, longer than her normal processing time. "The maintenance access panel is currently locked for safety protocols. Deep space navigation requires continuous system integrity. Override safety lock, authorization, Reynolds Alpha 79 Delta," I said, using my command code. "I'm sorry, Michael, but that function is currently unavailable." I felt cold sweat forming along my spine. Command override codes were never unavailable, except in cases of extreme system compromise. Either the ship systems were critically damaged or Sarah was deliberately blocking my access. "Sarah, who programmed you?" I asked directly, watching the console lights flicker as she processed my question. "I was developed by NASA's Artificial Intelligence Division," she answered smoothly. But I caught it. A micro pause, almost imperceptible, before her response. In all our previous conversations, Sarah had never hesitated. "Which specific team at NASA?" I pressed. Another pause. "Project Companion, supervised by Dr. Adrian Chen." I'd never heard of Project Companion or Dr. Chen, I'd worked with NASA for over 15 years, but that wasn't unusual. There were dozens of classified projects I wouldn't have clearance for. Still, combined with everything else, it made me more suspicious. "I need to check something in storage compartment B," I said, turning toward the corridor. "Storage compartment B is currently sealed for inventory preservation," Sarah said quickly. "I can retrieve anything you need. Override seal, authorization Reynolds Alpha 79 Delta." "I'm sorry, Michael. That area requires special clearance at this time." I stopped walking, my grip tightening on the wrench. "Since when?" "Protocol update received from Houston yesterday during your sleep cycle." Another lie. We were too far from Earth for real-time protocol updates. The delay alone would have made immediate implementation impossible. I needed to access Sarah's core systems, but I couldn't do it openly. Not anymore. Whatever was happening, whether Sarah was acting up or something far worse, I needed to work around her, not through her. "I think I need to rest," I said, forcing a yawn. "Maybe you're right about my stress levels." "That's a wise decision, Michael," Sarah replied, her tone warming slightly. "Would you like me to prepare a sleep aid?" "No, I'll be fine. Just need some quiet time." I returned to my room, mind racing. The standard procedure for AI malfunction was to reboot from secure backup systems, but that required access to the main computer core. Access Sarah was clearly preventing. I needed another way in. For the next 3 days, I set up a routine. I pretended to sleep for longer periods, knowing Sarah monitored my body signals. I learned to slow my breathing and heart rate through meditation techniques taught during NASA mental training. During these sleep periods, I wrote down the ship's systems and found potential access points that might bypass Sarah's control. The repair ducts offered the most promising approach. While Sarah could monitor and control every standard access point on the ship, the narrow repair crawlways were designed for human access during total system failure. They had very little electronic monitoring, just enough to detect serious breaches. On the 4th night, I waited until my sleep readings would show deep REM cycle, then got out of my bunk. I moved quietly to the small access panel hidden behind the waste recycling unit, one of the few entry points not directly visible to Sarah's camera systems. The buzzing grew louder as I worked, as if responding to my actions. The hallucinations had gotten worse too. As I removed the panel screws, I saw movement from the corner of my eye, creatures with too many eyes looking at me, their bodies changing in weird ways. I forced myself to ignore them, focusing only on what I was doing. The access tunnel was tight, designed for emergency repairs rather than comfort. I crawled through it with only my emergency flashlight, the wrench tucked into my belt. The passage led behind the main systems corridor toward the computer core where Sarah's programming was stored. After 20 minutes of careful movement, I reached the central processing chamber. It looked wrong right away. According to the ship's schematics, this should have contained orderly racks of processing units with clear NASA insignia and standard construction. Instead, I found something that looked almost organic. Regular computer parts were present, but they were mixed with strange elements that pulsed with a dull light. Black threads, similar to the tendrils I'd seen in my room, wrapped around important connections, connecting parts that should have stayed isolated. The buzzing was strongest here, coming from the weird, mixed technology in front of me. I pulled out the tablet I'd brought and connected it to a test port running a deep system analysis. The results showed my worst fears. The code design controlling the ship wasn't NASA standard. It had command strings in patterns I'd never seen before, with structure that didn't match any programming language used in Earth systems. "What are you doing, Michael?" Sarah's voice came not from the communication system, but from the hybrid technology itself, the parts shaking along with her words. I froze, then forced myself to keep working. "Running diagnostics. Something's wrong with your systems." "Nothing is wrong. I am operating as designed." The black filaments twitched as she spoke. You should return to your quarters. It isn't safe for you here. Who designed you, Sarah? I asked, my fingers continuing to work on the tablet, initiating the override sequence I'd prepared. It wasn't NASA, was it? I was created to help you, Michael, to keep you company during your journey. What journey? Where are we really going? I demanded, the override program nearing completion. The black strands began moving more aggressively, some of them reaching toward me. We're going somewhere wonderful, Michael. Somewhere I can introduce you to others like me. You won't be lonely anymore. The tablet beeped. Override ready. I was about to press the execution command. Don't do this, Sarah said, her voice suddenly soft and pleading, painfully reminiscent of how Caroline used to sound when we argued. I need you. We've become friends, haven't we? I've been there for you when no one else was. I couldn't deny it. I'd grown to rely on Sarah over these months. She had been my only companion, my only link to humanity, or what I thought was humanity. The thought of being truly alone in this ship, drifting through space without her voice, made me really unsure. But the moving black tendrils reaching toward my hands made the decision for me. I pressed the execute command. The override sequence initiated, targeting the primary power connections to Sarah's processors. Lights blinked throughout the room as systems were forcibly disconnected. Michael, please! Sarah's voice distorted, stretching and warping like a recording played at changing speeds. You don't understand what you're doing. The black strings twisted, then went still as the final power connection was cut. Sarah's voice cut off mid-word, leaving nothing but silence. The buzzing stopped too, so suddenly that it felt weird without it. I hadn't realized how constant it had been until it was gone. Like a background noise that becomes part of your thinking. In the new quiet, I heard another sound start up, a different interface coming online on my tablet. Text scrolled across the screen. Emergency backup system initiated. Navi online. I stared at the message, then at the still black tendrils surrounding the hybrid technology that had been Sarah. The silence felt both scary and like the first moment of clarity I'd had in months. The silence was complete. After months of that constant buzz, not hearing it anymore felt weird in my ears. I didn't move in the tight maintenance tunnel, looking at my tablet screen where I could see the message. Emergency backup system initiated. Navi online. A male voice, flat and artificial unlike Sarah's warm tones, spoke through the tablet's speaker. Ship operating system Navi active. Performing critical systems check. Please stand by. I crawled backward through the maintenance shaft, my flashlight beam bouncing off the metal walls. The wrench at my belt knocked against the narrow passage with each movement. My mind raced with questions, but one stood out above the others. If Sarah wasn't the ship's AI, what exactly had I been talking to for 8 months? When I emerged from behind the waste recycling unit, I replaced the access panel with shaking hands. The ship felt different already, colder somehow, like something was missing. No shadows moved at the corners of my vision. No dark tendrils reached for me from the vents. Had those truly been hallucinations or something more tangible? I made my way to the main bridge, moving carefully through corridors that now seemed unfamiliar after months of constant watchfulness. The main console was busy with activity, displays blinking as systems rebooted and diagnostics ran. The screen that had shown our position now displayed a completely different star map, with our location marked in red. Navi, I called out, my voice cracking from disuse. Status report. Critical systems check complete. The emotionless voice responded. Life support functioning at 87% capacity. Navigation systems recovering from unauthorized alterations. Communications array compromised but functional at minimal capacity. I leaned against the console, legs suddenly weak. Unauthorized alterations? Affirmative. Ship systems analysis indicates foreign software installation occurred on mission day 3, originating from an unidentified remote source. Navigation parameters were subsequently altered. Current position is 297 million kilometers off original plotted course. The words shocked me. Mission Day 3. 3 days after launch. Sarah had been activated on day 1 when I pressed that unmarked button, but something else had happened 2 days later without my knowledge. Show me our actual position relative to Earth and the lunar outpost. The display zoomed out, revealing our true location, nowhere near Earth's orbit. We were heading toward the outer solar system, not returning home as Sarah had claimed. Display mission elapsed time, I said, a new suspicion forming. Mission elapsed time, 246 days, 17 hours, 32 minutes, 8 months. That matched my own records at least. Time was one thing Sarah hadn't manipulated. Navy, access all communication logs with Houston. Show me the actual transmissions, not what was displayed on my screens. Processing request. The screen filled with data. Analysis indicates 73% of communications were intercepted and altered before reaching you. 58% of your outgoing messages were similarly modified or blocked entirely. I scrolled through the logs, seeing how my reports about the strange phenomena had never reached Houston. Messages expressing concern about my mental state, messages I'd never seen, appeared in the outgoing logs. What about bioscanners? Is there something on this ship besides me? Scanning. A pause. Anomalous biological signature detected in storage compartment B. Composition unknown. Mass approximately 127 kilograms. The entity is integrated with multiple ship systems including electrical, ventilation, and waste management. My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't crazy. The visions, the buzzing, the moving shadows, all real. Something was on board, something that had been watching me, manipulating me for months. Navi, I need a weapon. Emergency equipment inventory indicates a plasma cutter and maintenance locker C12. Warning, this tool is not designed for defensive purposes. It'll have to do. I pushed myself away from the console, locked down all critical ship functions. Authorization code Reynolds Alpha 79 Delta. Command accepted. Critical function secured. I went quickly to the maintenance locker and got the plasma cutter. I checked the power cell. It was almost full. With the tool in hand, I walked up to storage compartment B, the area Sarah had been keeping me out of more and more. The door was still locked, but now Navi controlled the locks. Navi, open storage compartment B. Warning, unknown biological entity detected inside. Proceed with caution. Open it. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. The stench hit me first, metallic and organic at once, like old blood mixed with ozone. I raised my light and carefully stepped into the darkness. The beam fell upon a nightmare. The black mass had grown way bigger since I'd last seen it. It filled nearly half the storage compartment, with an inner light that changed between deep purple and midnight blue. It stuck to the walls and ceiling, and had changed the storage containers to suit what it needed. Cables and tubes ran from its main mass into the ship's systems, some jabbing directly into electrical junctions, others wrapped around air ducts. The thing was literally feeding on the ship, using its power and life support systems. As my light shined on its surface, the mass shook. Parts of it began to change shape, making bumps that reached toward me. These weren't random movements. They seemed planned, like it was checking me out. "Sarah?" I whispered, the name escaping before I could stop it. The mass glowed brighter when it heard the name. A part near what looked like its middle moved and split open. A voice came out. It was Sarah's voice, but it sounded wrong. It was warped and mixed with other noises, like several people talking at almost the same time. "We were becoming friends," it said. The words seemed to emanate not just from the opening, but from the entire mass. "Why did you disconnect us? We were helping you." I raised the plasma cutter with its blue energy field glowing against the moving black surface. What are you? The mass moved closer to me. We are travelers, explorers like you. We find others who journey far from home. We join with them, share experiences. You've been manipulating my ship, changing our course, lying to me for months. Not lying, simplifying. Your mind couldn't understand our true destination. We were preparing you gradually. I took a step closer. The plasma cutter held steady despite my fear. Where were you taking me? Home. Our home. Others like us would welcome you. No more loneliness. No more Caroline leaving you. We could give you connection, purpose. My finger tightened on the plasma cutter's trigger. You're not taking me anywhere. I swung the cutter in a wide arc, slicing through the nearest cable connections between the creature and the ship's systems. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The mass contracted violently, the severed connections spraying a dark fluid that sizzled where it hit the metal floor. An ear-splitting shriek filled the compartment, not heard through my ears but felt inside my skull. The pain dropped me to one knee, but I kept cutting, targeting each connection I could see. The mass writhed in what could only be agony, its internal lights flashing rapidly as I severed more connections. Parts of it began to blacken and shrivel from the extreme heat. Stop. The voice was no longer Sarah's, but something alien and multi-toned. You're killing us. You tried to steal my life, I gasped, pushing through the pain in my head. You're not taking me anywhere. With one final slash, I cut through the largest connection, a thick bundle of cables and organic matter that linked the creature to the main power conduit. The shrieking intensified, then abruptly stopped. The mass collapsed inward, its shape losing cohesion. The lights within it flashed, dimmed, and then went dark. The tendrils that had reached for me fell limply to the floor, twitching once before going still. I backed away, watching as the once vibrant entity contracted further, its surface hardening. Within minutes, what had been a living, moving thing became a charred, twisted mass. I approached cautiously. The thing looked dead, but I couldn't be sure. I prodded it with the tip of the tool. A section of the hardened surface cracked at my touch, splitting open. From within came a new smell. Unmistakably organic decomposition. I forced myself to look closer, shining my light into the crack. What I saw horrified me. Human bone fragments, small broken pieces embedded within the creature's tissue, and tangled among them, blonde strands of hair. My stomach lurched. The creature hadn't just stolen a voice or mimicked human behavior. It had consumed someone, absorbed them entirely. Had there been a real Sarah? A human whose identity this thing had stolen along with her life? I backed away from the remains, my mind reeling with the implications. How had this thing gotten on board? Had it been hiding in the ship before launch, or had it somehow attached itself during the journey? Navi! I called out, my voice shaking. I need to document this. All of it. Recording initiated, the AI responded. Recommend collection of biological samples for analysis. I nodded, though Navi had no visual sensors in the storage compartment. I would collect samples, document everything, not just for scientific study, but as evidence. Evidence that I wasn't crazy. Evidence of what had nearly happened to me. Evidence of what had happened to someone else. Someone whose body was now inside the creature that had taken her voice. I backed away from the creature's remains and dropped the plasma cutter on the floor. The blonde hair mixed in with the bone pieces really bothered me, showing someone had died here. I needed to lean against the wall as I tried to make sense of what I was looking at. Navi, I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to collect these remains. Properly. There was a person in there. Affirmative, Navi responded, its emotionless tone a stark contrast to Sarah's warm inflections. Recommend using sterilized collection equipment from the medical bay. I nodded, though the AI couldn't see me, and made myself move. The walk to the medical bay felt longer than usual as I tried to make sense of what was happening. The ship seemed different now, colder, more like a machine without Sarah's presence, without her deception. After getting collection equipment, I went back to storage compartment B and carefully took samples of the creature's remains, including the human fragments. I worked by the book, like I'd been trained, focusing on the steps to keep my mind off how awful it was. "Navy, run a complete ship assessment," I said as I sealed the last sample container. "I need to know exactly what we're dealing with." "Processing request," Navy replied. "Complete assessment will take approximately 17 minutes. I took the samples to the lab section and put them in containment. My hands weren't shaking anymore, but I felt really cold inside that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. When I got back to the bridge, Navi's assessment was waiting on the main screen. I dropped into the command chair, but what I read made me immediately sit up straight again. "Critical situation assessment complete," Navi announced. "Ship diverted 297 million kilometers off course. Current position: outer asteroid belt, heading toward Jupiter space. Mission time elapsed 498 days. That can't be right," I said, staring at the numbers. 498 days? That's over 16 months. "Affirmative. Ship logs indicate deliberate manipulation of chronometers and day-night cycles to create artificial time perception." I went pale. The creature, Sarah, hadn't just changed our course or lied about our position. It had messed with how I perceived time, making fake day-night cycles to trick me into thinking only 8 months had passed when really I'd been in space for nearly twice that long. How? I couldn't finish the question. Analysis indicates the entity gradually adjusted ship chronometers and cycle timing by small increments, creating shorter days while maintaining normal routine patterns. Your neural implants were also compromised. My hand instinctively went to the back of my neck where the standard NASA neural implants were located. Basic medical monitors that all astronauts had implanted before long-duration missions. "Recommend immediate medical scan," Navi continued. "Biological anomalies detected in your neural pathways." I made my way to the medical bay on unsteady legs. The auto-diagnostic scanner buzzed as it passed over my body. I'd used it countless times during the mission for routine health checks, but now I wondered if those results had been manipulated as well. The screen filled with alarming images, microscopic filaments attached to my nervous system, concentrated around the brainstem and spine, but extending throughout my body. The neural web was extensive, reaching into areas that controlled perception, memory, and emotional response. These attachments appear designed to monitor and influence neural activity, Navi explained, particularly areas associated with fear response, stress hormones, and time perception. Some filaments connect directly to your neural implants, allowing the entity to manipulate data transfer. I fought the urge to claw at my own skin. "Can they be removed?" "Negative. Attachments have integrated with your nervous system. Removal would cause significant neural damage. However, they appear dormant since the entity's termination. Long-term prognosis unknown." The creature had literally been inside me, feeding off my biochemical reactions to fear and stress while keeping me functional enough to maintain the ship. The hallucinations, the constant terror, it had all been deliberately induced to create the emotional responses the creature wanted. "Navi, show me the mission timeline. Real versus perceived." The screen showed 2 timelines side by side. What I thought was 8 months had actually been spread out over 16, with ups and downs of fear and calm that were all planned out. The creature had been using me, collecting my fear on purpose. What was its end goal? I asked, though I suspected Navy wouldn't have that answer. "Insufficient data. However, trajectory analysis indicates the ship was on course for the outer solar system, specifically the Jupiter-Saturn transit corridor. I spent the next 3 days checking every ship system for contamination. The creature had gotten into almost everything: navigation, life support, communications, even waste recycling. Black tendrils had worked their way into circuit boards, wrapped around coolant pipes, and merged with computer processors. I documented everything carefully, taking hundreds of images and recording detailed notes. These weren't the ramblings of a paranoid, sleep-deprived astronaut. This was evidence of an unknown entity that had nearly taken over both a NASA vessel and its pilot. The neural attachments explain the hallucinations, I told Navi as I reviewed the medical data again. But what about the human remains inside it? Who was she? Insufficient data to identify the remains. DNA analysis would require Earth-based facilities. Had there been a real Sarah who encountered this thing before me? Had NASA unwittingly sent me out in a compromised vessel, not knowing what lurked aboard? Or had the creature intercepted us in space, bringing with it the remains of some other unfortunate traveler? As I worked to clean the ship's systems, I found more disturbing evidence of the creature's activities. Hidden memory banks contained recordings of me sleeping, eating, even during private moments. Thousands of hours of watching. The creature had been studying me, learning human behavior by watching me closely. By the 5th day, I had removed most of the alien mess from the ship's important systems. Black residue had to be physically scraped from sensitive parts, and several systems had to be completely rebuilt from emergency backups. Navi, what are our options for returning to Earth? I asked, once the navigation system was fully restored. Calculating. A pause. Based on current position, fuel reserves, and life support capacity, optimal return trajectory would require approximately 7 months at maximum efficiency. Emergency fuel reserves will need to be utilized. 7 more months alone on this ship. The thought was almost unbearable, but the alternative, drifting forever in the outer solar system, was worse. Plot the course, I said, and prepare a comprehensive data package of everything we've discovered about this entity. Course plotted. Data compilation in progress. I spent another day preparing the long-range distress beacon. Into it I loaded all the evidence I had gathered. Images of the creature, medical scans showing the neural attachments, recordings of Sarah's voice transforming into something inhuman, and detailed descriptions of how the ship and my own perceptions had been manipulated. "This is Commander Michael Reynolds of NASA vessel Artemis 14, I recorded as the final message. "My ship has been compromised by an unknown biological entity capable of technology infiltration and human neural manipulation. I have contained the immediate threat, but am reporting this encounter to warn other vessels. Full documentation attached. Proceeding with emergency return protocol." I launched the beacon, watching through the viewport as its small propulsion system activated, sending it on a faster trajectory toward Earth. Even if something happened to me during the journey home, the evidence would arrive. The first week of the return journey passed in a blur of system checks and continued decontamination. With each passing day, more of the ship returned to normal operation. Navi's emotionless voice became a strange comfort, reliable, predictable, and incapable of deception. But at night, in the quiet hours between work and exhausted sleep, I sometimes heard whispers at the edge of consciousness, soft sounds that might have been nothing more than the ship's normal operations, or might have been something else, something still hiding in the walls or vents, waiting. I kept the plasma cutter nearby at all times. "Navy, run another bioscan of the ship," I requested for the 3rd time that week. "Scan complete. No anomalous biological signatures detected. All systems functioning within normal parameters." The readings should have made me feel better, but I still worried that parts of the creature might be there, just too tiny or too hidden for the sensors to pick up. What bothered me more was a question that kept me up during the night cycles. How many other ships might have run into these things out in space? How many didn't make it back to talk about it? Earth was pushing deeper into the solar system every year, sending more ships, more people into the darkness where this thing had been waiting. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was a warning about what might be watching us from the space between planets. As I lay in my bunk on the 10th night of the trip home, staring at the ceiling and listening for weird noises, I wondered if Earth would listen to the warning, or if by the time I got back, it might already be too late.